Imagine this. You're at your own funeral, but this isn't the romanticized version, where people give long, heartfelt speeches, playing soft piano music in the background. No, this is stark, silent, unfiltered. You're not in a church or a neatly arranged hall. You're hovering somewhere between presence and absence, watching the fragments of your life as if they were scenes from a movie. The years flash before you, not as milestones, but as days. Ordinary, forgettable days. Days filled with quiet scrolling, with saying, maybe later. With filling your calendar, but emptying your soul. There are no headlines here. No heroic last stands. Just time. Gone. The tragedy isn't that you died. It's that you never really lived. You feel something twist inside, a silent agony you didn't know existed. Not pain, not sorrow. Something darker. Wasted potential. The dreams you buried under realism. The love you didn't fight for. The truth you swallowed to stay agreeable. The art you never made. The places you never dared to go, not because you couldn't, but because you chose not to. All of it, undone, unlived, undone. And suddenly, one brutal question forms and won't let go. What if I wasted it all? That question doesn't scream. It whispers, chilling and relentless. It's the one you've dodged for years beneath jokes, routines, substances, and social validation. Because deep down, you felt it, this growing, unbearable sense that you're living at half volume, that your soul is watching your body walk through a life designed by fear and default, that each day you postpone your becoming is another day lost to someone you were never meant to be. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And now, here you are, face to face with yours. And it has questions. Did you ever chase what truly lit you up? Just what numbed the emptiness? Did you ever say what you meant, or only what was safe? Did you live as a flamier, just flicker politely in the background? The answers don't come in words. They come in a weight, a knowing, a grief not for what happened, but for what never did. You try to reach back, to undo, to rewrite, to scream, but it's too late in this dream. All you can do is witness it. And then you wake up, sweat on your neck, heart pounding, silence around you. It was just a vision, but it felt more real than anything you've touched in weeks. And in that haunting clarity, one truth remains, echoing. You are still alive. But the question, that question remains. Are you really living, or just surviving in the margins of your own life? This isn't about ambition. It's not about success, or money, or followers, or applause. It's about presence. It's about truth. It's about the painful recognition that maybe, just maybe, you've made comfort your God and busyness your disguise. And here's the paradox. You've done everything right. You got the degree, got the job, checked the boxes. You followed the blueprint society handed you since birth. But now that you're really here, you can't escape this gnawing question. Why does it still feel so hollow? You don't lack food, shelter, or even opportunity. What you lack is meaning. And meaning isn't something you can download, schedule, or simulate. Meaning requires suffering. It requires sacrifice. It requires you to shatter your illusions and confront the unbearable freedom of being human. You realize you've been hypnotized, not by a villain, not by a conspiracy, but by the slow, seductive lull of habit and expectation. You became what was acceptable, not what was essential. And now, something ancient inside you is stirring a primal scream from the part of you that still remembers. The part that isn't interested in fitting in, but in becoming whole. You've been taught to optimize your time, but never to question your life. You've been told to chase happiness, but never to define truth. You've been warned against failure, but never shown the agony of regret. And now, that dread becomes a teacher. Because only when everything false collapses do you start asking the question that matters. What does it mean to waste a life? Is it missing your dreams? Abandoning your gifts? Settling for half-truths? Smiling when you want to scream? Or is it something even worse? Never asking? This is the edge you now stand on. Between continuation and confrontation. Between sedation and awakening. Between who you've been told to be and who you might become if you stopped lying to yourself. So ask yourself, what if nothing changes? What if this is it? What if you never rebel? Never write the thing? Never speak the truth? Never fall madly, messily, terrifyingly in love with existence itself? Would you be okay with that? Because if not, the time to act isn't one day. The time is now. But before you break free, before you reclaim your life, you need to understand why this happened, why you let it. There is something more terrifying than failure, more numbing than boredom, more paralyzing than fear. It's the slow erosion of your inner world under the weight of a life that isn't truly yours. You weren't born disconnected. As a child, you stared at the stars and asked questions no one could answer. You felt things deeply. You dreamed without limits. But over time, that fire began to dim, not because you chose to kill it, but because you were taught to. Carl Jung called this the creation of the personatum mask we wear to survive in society. It's necessary. It helps us function. But the tragedy occurs when we begin to mistake the mask for the face beneath, when the image you project to others becomes the prison you live in. And you adapted well, too well. You learned how to meet expectations, play roles, and stay agreeable. You learned how to bury inconvenient questions, how to make small talk instead of telling the truth. And little by little, you drifted away from your authentic self, not because you were weak, but because you were obedient. This obedience is the real danger, because you weren't taught to seek truth. You were taught to seek approval from parents, from teachers, from systems built to value compliance over curiosity. But the soul doesn't care about approval. It craves meaning. And when it doesn't get it, it begins to rebel. Quietly at first, then louder, through anxiety, fatigue, numbness, the sense that something essential has gone missing but you can't quite name what it is. That is the invisible wound of the modern human. Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps, saw this wound in those who had lost all sense of why. He called it the existential vacuum, a state of spiritual numbness that comes not from suffering, but from the absence of meaning in suffering. When life becomes routine, predictable, and directionless, the soul begins to rot. You might not notice it immediately. After all, you're busy. You have goals, calendars, things to prove. But beneath all that motion, there's no direction. Just movement for movement's sake. This is the hidden problem. You're not living falsely because you're failing. You're failing because you're living falsely. And it's not just psychological, it's philosophical. Nietzsche warned that the death of meaning would bring with it a subtle, creeping nihilism. Not the dramatic kind that screams into the void, but the quiet kind. The kind that scrolls endlessly, that stays busy, that never sits alone with itself. It's not despair you feel, it's emptiness. And that emptiness It's not your fault. It's the byproduct of a society that never asked you to become real, only to become useful. You inherited a blueprint. Go to school, get the job, climb the ladder, smile on cue, suppress doubt, sacrifice wonder, pretend this is enough. And if something still feels missing, medicate it, escape it, rationalize it. Jean-Paul Sartre believed that humans are condemned to be free. That freedom is terrifying. Because once you realize you're responsible for creating meaning, there's no one left to blame. So instead, most people outsource their purpose. They follow paths designed by others, safe, structured, soulless. And here's the most brutal irony. The more successfully you live someone else's life, the more painful it becomes. Because every step forward in the wrong direction is a step away from yourself. The world doesn't need more success stories. It needs more people who remember how to feel, how to question, how to burn with a purpose they weren't handed, but uncovered. But that uncovering requires descent. Carl Jung believed that to find the self, you must confront the shadow, the part of you you've rejected, repressed, or denied. Not to destroy it, but to integrate it. To become whole, not perfect. You're not broken because you feel lost. You feel lost because the map you were given never led to you. This map leads to performance, reputation, applause, but not depth, not truth, not wholeness. And so, you stay busy. You play your role. You keep the mask on, but the cracks are showing. You laugh, but it's hollow. You achieve, but it doesn't fulfill. You're surrounded by people, but you feel alone. You've become a stranger to your own Suland. You're starting to notice. That noticing is everything. It means the sedative is wearing off. The truth is resurfacing. And with it comes a choice. Continue drifting in a life that is slowly killing your spirit, or begin the terrifying, exhilarating journey back to yourself. But to do that, you must understand just how high the cost of this disconnection really is. You must feel the weight of what you're losing, not in theory, but in every missed moment, every silenced truth, every unchosen path. Only then can you truly rebel. And that rebellion begins with the next truth. This isn't just hurting you, it's consuming you. There is a cost to forgetting who you are. It doesn't arrive in the form of crisis, not at first. It arrives quietly in habits, in silence, in the invisible weight you carry each morning when you rise and pretend you're fine. It shows up in the pause before you answer, "How are you?" In the tension behind your smile, in the subtle, sinking feeling that you're watching your life more than you're living it. You function. But function is not the same as fulfillment. The world has taught you how to survive, but not how to feel alive. And so, you enter what Carl Jung might have called a psychic paralysis, a condition where the body moves, but the soul is absent, where you respond to texts, attend meetings, meet deadlines, but something within you is flickering, flickering, flickering out. This is the consequence no one warned you about. You don't break. You fade. Not dramatically, incrementally. Every time you say yes, when you mean no. Every time you swallow your truth for the sake of being liked. Every time you settle into comfort instead of chasing meaning. You trade vitality for safety. You trade curiosity for predictability. You trade the unknown, which is terrifying, yes, for the familiar, which is quietly fatal. Your life becomes manageable, but it no longer feels yours. And the scariest part? You start to believe this is normal. You begin telling yourself that this is what adulthood is. That maturity means killing off your dreams in exchange for stability. That passion is childish. That joy is indulgent. That urgency is irrational. This is the conditioning, the slow rewriting of your internal code, not by tyrants or dictators, but by repetition, sedation, distraction. We live in a culture addicted to numbing. We scroll not because we're interested, but because it keeps us from sitting still. We work not because we're inspired, but because the alternative is silence, and silence is where the real questions begin. We accumulate titles, things, followers, but none of it feeds the part of us that is starving. That starvation has a name: spiritual malnutrition. And you can dress it up with success, wrap it in achievement, mask it with productivity, but it leaks through eventually. It shows up in relationships that feel transactional instead of intimate, in friendships where you laugh, but never go deeper, in marriages that run on logistics, not connection. You wake up next to someone who doesn't really know you, because you no longer know yourself. And then there's the fatigue. The kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, because your body isn't tired. Your being is. Tired of pretending, tired of pleasing, tired of carrying a life that doesn't feel like your own. The psychologist Rollo May once said, "The opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice, it is conformity." This is the unseen epidemic. People conforming to lives they never chose, playing roles they secretly resent, wearing smiles that don't reach their eyes, but the consequences go deeper. Over time, your mind adapts. Neurons prune the parts of you that go unused. Stop creating, and you lose the instinct. Stop questioning, and you lose the courage. Stop dreaming, and the dreamer in you dies. This is neuroplasticity turned against the soul. You're not just falling into routine. You're being rewired. Your attention span shrinks. Your depth of thought erodes. Your tolerance for solitude vanishes. And so, you rely on noise, music, podcasts, feeds, shows, anything to keep you from sitting alone with that small, soft voice inside that keeps asking, "Is this really it?" But the voice never goes away. It may quiet down, it may whisper, but it waits beneath the noise, beneath the busy, beneath the pressure to perform. It waits for you to listen, because if you don't, the consequences compound. Life loses color, experiences blur, time accelerates. You look back and wonder where the last 5 years went, not because they passed quickly, but because they passed unconsciously. And regret starts to crystallize not over what you did, but over what you never allowed yourself to do. That's the sharpest sting. Not failure, incompletion. You lived around your purpose, near it, adjacent to it, but never in it. And the world? It doesn't mind. It won't stop you. It rewards your compliance. It claps for your performance. It likes your photos. But at night, when the applause dies down and you're left with yourself, the silence grows louder. You begin to feel the gap between what your life looks like and what it could have been. And unless that gap is confronted, it will consume you, not all at once, but year by year, until one day you wake up and realize you've mastered a version of life that was never meant for you. But if you've made it here reading this, you're not too far gone, because awareness is the beginning, and rebellion is coming next. It begins with a whisper, then a fracture, then a refusal. The first rebellion is not loud. It doesn't start with speeches or slogans. It begins in the smallest of moments, the moment you look at your life and silently say, "No more. No more pretending. No more postponing. No more surviving in the skin of someone you never chose to be. And make no mistake, this rebellion will cost you. But the alternative, continuing to drift, to numb, to betray your deeper knowing is far more expensive. Because the longer you wait, the more of yourself you lose. Carl Jung warned, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming is not convenient. It is a confrontation with who you've been, with who you're not, with what you've denied in order to be accepted. So, where does freedom begin? It starts with truth. The courage to admit, I am not living fully. I am not whole. I have compromised things that mattered more than I realized. Until you name the lie, you can't exit it. This is the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming psychologically whole. It's not about self-improvement. It's about self-confrontation. You don't add new habits. You strip away illusions. You don't fix yourself. You reclaim yourself. And to do that, you must first step away from the noise. The modern world is designed to keep you distracted. Every ping, post, and feed is a wall between you and your inner world. You must reclaim your attention, because your attention is your life. What you give it to, you become. So turn off the noise. Sit in the silence. Let the questions rise. They will scare you. They're meant to. Ask them anyway. What do I pretend not to know? What parts of me have I abandoned to be accepted? What would I do if no one clapped? No one liked. No one noticed. But I felt alive. This is where the rebellion sharpens. When you stop seeking permission, stop waiting for the right time, stop waiting for confidence, stop waiting until you're ready. Ready is a myth sold to keep you passive. The truth is, you don't need more time. You need more honesty. You already know the thing you've avoided. The conversation, the change, the risk, the dream that keeps visiting you at 2 a.m. like a ghost that refuses to be buried. You keep telling yourself, it's too late, too risky, too complicated. But what if it's not? What if the risk is the door, not the danger? What if the discomfort you fear is the exact friction that burns away the false self? The rebellion isn't about becoming fearless. It's about becoming willing. Willing to feel. Willing to fall. Willing to burn away everything that is not you. This means choosing integrity over image, presence over performance, meaning over momentum. It means slowing down. Not because you're lazy, but because you're listening now to the subtle signals, the inner ache, the sacred discontent that no longer lets you sleep through your own life. Consider this. The most radical act in a world addicted to speed is to slow down and feel. To pause, to wonder, to ask not just what's next, but what matters. You may feel alone at first. Everyone else seems busy, unbothered, fine. But most are just performing normalcy, wearing smiles like armor. You're not crazy for questioning. You're awake, and awakening is lonely. Until it's not. Because once you rebel, truly rebel, something strange happens. You begin to attract others who have done the same. People who speak in truths, not scripts. People who don't ask what you do, but who you are. People who make you feel less like a machine and more like a human. You begin to surround yourself not with those who reinforce your mask, but those who nourish your becoming. This is not a fantasy. It's history. Every transformative life began with a rupture, a refusal. Nietzsche walked away from the comforts of convention to write words that would unsettle the world. Frankl found meaning inside a death camp. Jung broke from the rigid doctrines of Freud to follow the path of the soul. They all chose truth over approval, depth over ease. So must you. Your rebellion might not look heroic. It might begin with quitting a job, ending a relationship, starting a journal, walking into a forest with no destination, just a question in your chest. That's enough, because the point is not to impress anyone. The point is to no longer betray yourself. You don't need to become someone new. You need to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. That version of you still lives underneath the armor, the roles, the numbness. Still burning, still waiting for you to return. Not tomorrow. Now. There is a moment, after the rebellion begins, when the fire cools. You've burned the old masks. You've walked away from the lies. You've dared to listen to your own soul, but now comes the silence. No more applause. No one handing you answers. No road signs pointing forward. Just you, alone, with a vast, open question. Now what? This is the abyss where meaning must be forged, not found. And here,